Terranigma is officially back, but after waiting more than 30 years, is that really all we're getting? So just a few days ago, I uploaded a video about a teaser suggesting that one of Square Enix's most inaccessible JRPGs could finally be coming back. And there were some extremely obvious references hidden throughout that teaser, from the music, the dialogue, and the names in the copyright. Well, we don't have to speculate on what it is anymore, because Terranigma is officially returning in 2027, more than 3 decades after it first released. But while the teaser has answered the question of what it is, it's also given us a lot more questions of like, what exactly is going on here? This isn't the HD 2D remake that some of you might have wanted. It also doesn't appear to be an entirely untouched version of the original game. We've been promised some upgrades, adjustments, maybe some bonus features. Original Terranigma personnel are involved in this production, and physical editions are already planned. So let's break this down. What was announced, what kind of revival Terranigma is actually receiving, and why even a relatively faithful re-release represents a massive moment for one of the most famously lost JRPGs of the 16-bit era. So before we get to all that, don't forget to like and subscribe, leave your thoughts down below. I would love to know, have you played Terranigma before? Are you excited for this re-release or revival? Let's get to it. So yes, Terranigma was officially revealed during the Pixel Arcadia showcase. Now this new version is being developed under license from Square Enix, and most importantly, at least some of the people responsible for the original game and the original planning are involved in figuring out how this should be presented to a modern audience. As we can see on the trailer here, it's going to be accessible on most consoles, so anybody here watching this video is going to have the chance to play it, which is really great. So physical and digital versions happening, although we don't know what platforms will receive physical copies for just yet, although I would say probably the standard Switch, PS5, Switch 2, etc. So either way, this is about as broad as release as we could have reasonably hoped for. Now, Terranigma won't be trapped on one console, locked behind a subscription service or anything else. Nearly everybody who has heard about this game being described as a lost masterpiece or whatever else is finally going to have a straightforward and legal way to experience it, which is probably the best part. Now, the most important thing to clarify here is that this is not being presented as a remake. Bear that in mind. And I kind of talked about this on the video last week as well. Now the trailer shows the original pixel art presentation, all that original stuff. And anybody hoping to see Terranigma completely rebuilt with even a scale of presentation similar to like the Live Alive or Live Alive remake, yes, you're probably gonna be disappointed. Even the Steam page shows that, hey, we're celebrating the artwork, the music, and the gameplay that Terranigma already has, rather than doing a dramatically reimagined experience. However, Clear River Games is also not describing this as a completely untouched ROM. The announcement says that this is going to be a new version containing some upgrades, tweaks, and bonus features intended to make the game a little bit more approachable for modern players. The Steam version already confirms achievements and cloud saves, but actual in-game improvements haven't been shown, so we don't know if this is going to have save states or rewind functionality or CRT filters or different aspect ratio options, difficulty adjustments, or anything else really. I mean, we also don't know whether the original translation is being preserved or revised, or whether or not the soundtrack is going to receive any new arrangements. I mean, for a lot of what I would call ROM repackagings, you can kind of expect all the above that I've just listed. I would really love to hear some new arrangements as well with the Terranigma soundtrack, because it's a really great soundtrack, really underrated soundtrack as well. So you can kind of guess the quality of life features that we're going to get here, although again, there's no official announcement or confirmation. Now the uncertainty of this whole announcement is probably the weakest part. We know the game and what it looks like, we know where we can play it, and we know when it's going to show up, but we don't know what meaningfully separates this version from playing the original game, or dare I say even emulating it on your computer or something like that, with some of these really great and robust programs that can do a number of things for quality of life. So until we see what these features are, I would describe this as a faithfully enhanced re-release rather than a remake, and I definitely wouldn't call it Terranigma HD 2D. Now please bear in mind, even if this is a relatively modest re-release or port of something, we cannot ignore the historical significance of this moment for Terranigma. Like I said in my video last week, or if you just don't know, Terranigma originally launched in 1995 in Japan before receiving any English re-release across Europe and Australia in 1996. It never came out in the US or North America because Enix had already closed doors there, and it just didn't pan out, unfortunately. So despite earning an incredibly passionate following, Terranigma was never ported anywhere else or even added to a digital storefront. So the lack of availability has always shaped the way that people discuss this game. It's obviously remembered as a great RPG or JRPG, and it really has become the great game from Square Enix, originally Enix, that so many people were never given an official chance to play. So unless you owned an original cartridge or imported it or turned to unofficial alternatives, Terranigma effectively didn't exist for a lot of you. And games like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, and Secret of Mana have been re-released many times, allowing each new generation to discover why those games mattered. But Terranigma was left behind, meaning its reputation had to survive almost entirely through word of mouth. Now, thankfully, this whole re-release or revival changes the whole script on that, which is, again, really important. Terranigma finally has the opportunity to be judged as an actual game rather than this like mythical object that people talk about online. You know, the story of Erek resurrecting continents and restoring plants and animals and eventually guiding humanity back into the world can finally reach a wider audience that, unfortunately was denied in the late 90s. So availability might not sound as exciting as like a visual HD 2D remake, but preservation is what allows this whole game's legacy to continue. And after more than 30 years, Terranigma is finally being preserved properly. And one of the most exciting parts of this announcement is the return of original character designer and manga artist Kamui Fujiwara. In the last video last week, I talked about, he was really supportive and open to the idea of bringing Terranigma back in some way, shape, or form. And here we go, 5 years later, he's officially involved. But his exact level of creative involvement is not really known yet, but his presence gives this version a really important connection to the original game. More importantly, the announcement credits Square Enix and Quintet and Fujiwara together. So whatever legal or creative barriers prevented Terranigma from being released before, enough of those pieces have finally been brought together to make the project possible. Now, I've actually seen a lot of you guys comment in my last video as to why Terranigma has been in limbo, essentially. And from what I understand, one of the original creators or the rights holders or something like that has been essentially uncontactable for well over 25 or 30 years. And I think there's some sort of new Japanese law that says if nobody's touching this, it can kind of go back into the ether. I could be totally wrong. I haven't researched this. I'm excited about the idea of more IPs coming back in this way. So I'm sure some of you guys in the comments will educate me on that further. But allegedly, that's the vibe here. Now, one other question I have about this whole project is about the physical version. Of course, I mean, I love my physical games just as much as, well, probably most of you guys watching anyway. So I love the fact that this is being preserved now on a modern re-release that we can acquire physically. But Limited Run Games is listed alongside Clear River Games on the Steam page, but neither company has revealed the physical platforms or where it's going to be available. I mean, we can assume, again, like PS5 and Switch 2 and Switch 1. So we have to also remember that Terranigma's original complete in box version has become a really expensive collector's item. So I'd imagine there's going to be enormous interest in a properly produced physical edition. So hopefully all this and a much clearer explanation of what's going to be involved in a physical release. I'm sure there's probably going to be a nice collector's edition as well. So hopefully we'll get all that information soon, and hopefully we can all get one. Now, I completely understand if any of you guys are underwhelmed or disappointed in what was shown. So let's touch on that now. Yes, a proper HD 2D remake could have introduced this world with an entirely new level of scale and atmosphere. It also could have justified deeper revisions to the combat and the translation and maybe even the progression as well. So after waiting this long, wanting something more ambitious is entirely reasonable. At the same time, Terranigma's original pixel art and melancholic soundtrack are really inseparable from its identity. A faithful release protects these qualities and introduces far less risk of the game obviously being altered into something that the original audience doesn't necessarily vibe with, and that's really just the most important part of it here. As much as I want an HD 2D remake, I think we have to start small. Terranigma deserves the accurate one-to-one thing that you would have played on the Super Nintendo back in the 90s, and if Clear River Games can deliver that, preserving the original presentation might actually be the right way forward. But of course, until we know all the enhancements, I think cautious excitement is healthier than automatically assuming that this is going to be like the definitive version. And the other question is could more Quintet games follow? I mean, I know some of you guys were speculating in the comments on my last video that this could be part of the Gaia trilogy or the Soul Blazer trilogy. We're going to see 3 games on 1 cartridge or something like that, but obviously that's not the case. But what if? But aside from that, we have to argue that Terranigma was probably the most complicated of these 3 games in that trilogy to revive, and now Square Enix, Clear River Games have established a working relationship around it. So if this release performs well, it would obviously send a message that an audience still exists for the rest of maybe Quintet's catalog around that time. So Terranigma may represent more than just bringing 1 game back. Obviously, it's going to determine whether other pieces of Enix history are allowed to return as well. So again, we finally have the answer of what this is. This is a Terranigma revival, not necessarily a remaster or a something else HD 2D version. And again, understandably, some of you guys are disappointed, and fair enough, but I think from a preservationist standpoint, this is a really important moment, especially for this game and JRPGs as a whole. So I'm excited to see what's in store for Terranigma and the future of anything Quintet and Soul Blazer Gaia trilogy. So don't forget to like and subscribe, leave your thoughts down below, and we'll see you again on another video very soon. Bye-bye.